Good morning. Good morning. First of all, let me apologize to you all for not doing my live show that I usually do on Mondays. I had some responsibilities that I had to take care of in regards to my mother, and we got those things rolling, and hopefully they'll have a good outcome. So last week was pretty eventful for me. We were able to do quite a few deliveries to help individuals with disabilities. Uh, and some of those deliveries I think were much needed because when you live in an area that's impoverished, any little thing can be a source of joy and a source of encouragement for a person. So we're pretty happy about the results of that also. But now this morning, uh, I wanted to really do a public service announcement if I possibly could. I'm hearing more and more often now, and we're going to get into our topic for this morning. Individuals use the term my truth as opposed to just the truth in general. And then you even have some individuals that say that there's no such thing as an absolute truth. Now, of course, I disagree with the last statement, but I understand what an individual could mean when they say my truth. Just think about it for a moment. Um, and I'll use something that we all have experienced from time to time. Let's say, for instance, you have a family member. Maybe it's your husband. Maybe it's one of your children. Maybe it's a good friend of yours. And you ask that good friend, you say, okay, man, how's the weather today? And they tell you, oh, man, it is very, very hot outside. And you dress accordingly. And then when you get outside, it's nothing of what you were told. You were told that it was hot, right? And the weather is pleasant, it's agreeable to you, and really, the way that you address does not befit the current temperature. Have you ever had that to happen? Of course you have, because I know I have. So, what is the reality of the situation? The reality is that that particular day, let's say for instance, for the sake of conversation, the weather forecast was that it was going to be clear, it was going to be sunny, it was going to be 79 degrees, right? But where the difficulty comes in sometimes is how we experience the reality of things. Now, you have some people that enjoy sunshine, some people that get a boost from sunshine, and then you get some people that sunshine is kind of burdensome to them. The heat is something that they're not used to having to go through. They like cooler temperatures. That's what they prefer. And so, in that particular instance, it varies from person to person. But now, did the reality change in that particular instance? Even though one person thought it was extremely hot and you thought the weather was nice, did the reality change based upon how you all experienced it? It was still 79 degrees, it was still sunny, and it was still clear, right? That's the reality of it. But the way that each individual experiences certain situations is different, right? And so I think that when a person uses the term my truth, basically what they're saying is this is how I experienced that particular situation. And of course, because we're all different, we all are wired a little differently, right? We have different emotions that might come up depending on what circumstance we're in, or we react differently. So the way that we experience things as a whole is different. But now, does the reality of the situation that we experience change? From my example, you can tell that it doesn't. Not the reality of it. The way we experience it does, right? And I say all that, and I know that I kind of belabored that particular point, but I wanted to make that clear because where I'm going now could be a situation that could cause you difficulty in life. I know it has in mine. You run into individuals and they say, well, this is my truth. And in some instances, what a person is doing, they're trying to come up with a way to justify bad behavior. And so what they'll do, they'll say, okay, this is my truth. Now, what are they really doing when they're saying that? Well, it's easy to tell you what they're doing. So you have a situation where an individual makes their statement. What they're saying is, this is the way I experienced this situation. But instead of saying that, okay, even though I experienced it a certain way, the reality of the situation is this. What they're saying is, I'm going to take the way that I experienced it, and I'm going to make the way I experienced it more important than the reality of the situation. Right? So when an individual begins to do that, now we're getting in dangerous territory. We're getting in dangerous territory because an individual who is willing to put their emotions and how they feel over the reality of a certain situation, now they can twist the situation. They can bend it to their will. And if they bend it enough, in certain circumstances, they just become untruthful. They become liars because they've taken this situation. They've said, okay, here's my truth. And based upon my truth, I'm going to look at the situation this way. I'm going to handle the situation this way. Now, there's a difference in looking at a person and being able to acknowledge that they had a different experience in a certain situation. It's a difference between that and having an individual twist the situation to fit their own ends. So there's a difference between being realistic and there's a difference between being delusional. And see, that's what we're doing. You're being delusional if you can look at a situation, see the reality of it, and still choose to go with your own emotions, your own thought process, as opposed to looking at the reality and dealing with the reality. Now, why do I say that this is a public service announcement? Because I want you to be careful. Because there could be individuals in your life that are doing the same thing. And you are faced with situations, difficult situations, because those individuals choose not to see what the reality is. They choose not to see it. And no matter how hard you work to help them to see it, they still choose not to, because reality, if we're being realistic, if we're being truthful, reality at times can be very, very difficult to deal with. It can be hard to cope. But in any situation where an individual is willing to take on the reality of what's really going on around them, then see, now you're equipped. You're not living in the delusion. You're not expecting something to come your way and materialize out of thin air. Now you're living in the reality of the situation, and as difficult as it may be to cope, you're ready to move forward. You're ready to go in the direction that you think would be best because you see the reality of it. You're not looking at a situation that's quite possibly detrimental to your health and the health of the ones around you. You're not looking at that situation and saying, well, maybe it'll get better. Maybe things will turn around for me. No, because you're looking at things and you're being realistic, then you can look at it for what it is and you can gather the pieces and you can move forward. And that's the thing that we need to do. We don't need to be living in delusion. We don't need to be living, because what happens while living in delusion more than not is you don't get the end result that you want. You don't get the result that you want because you weren't putting in the necessary effort in the beginning, because you were operating under a faulty reasoning. The assumptions that you were making were faulty. And so that's the reason why things didn't go the way that they should have gone in your particular case. So let's be realistic. Let's be realistic. We know that there are going to be difficulties in life. We know there are going to be things that we're going to have to go through. But we don't need to go into those things thinking that they're going to somehow magically work themselves out. There's a difference between that and being positive. Being positive means that we're going to put forth the necessary effort to have the right conclusion. And that's what we're all about, positivity. So be careful. Be careful when you hear someone say, this is my truth. Because if they're not telling you how they experience things, then it's a possibility that they're being dishonest, okay? But that's the thought for this morning, man. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. My week has gotten off to a good start, and I'm going to work so that it'll continue to be good. Please, as I always say, do something positive this week, and something positive will come back to you in greater measure. As always, man, we love y'all. Peace.